Hi, this is Phoenix, and I've been thinking a bit about paranoia, conspiracy theories, and ideas that might come from a kind of persecutory delusion or some kind of fear, an excess fear or paranoia about things. I haven't been able to come up with any conclusions. Often this is something I write about when I write about certain aspects of mental illness, but I wanted to make the discussion a little bit broader, even though I don't necessarily have any conclusions. And that's because I've been trying to think about why a typical mindset might not fall into these traps, but why a mindset that is perhaps heavily biased might. So in that sense, I have to still think about it in the context of mental illness. It would seem to me that most people don't immediately fall into conspiracy theories to explain phenomena that they don't understand. And this is a point that I realized recently, only very recently, even though I've given it a lot of thought, that when we are conspiratorial about things, when we think that people are out to hurt us, often this is actually a very rare kind of thing, because when I look at the way that most people think, it is often much more nuanced with how they relate to other people, and these notions of threats are often not there for most people. So the way that I understand this is that perhaps a kind of subjective experience that perhaps I may have, or someone suffering from mental illness may have, is essentially unfounded. Yet when you are kind of in this perspective of paranoia, for instance, the situation seems very founded. And so I'm trying to figure out how there can be such an extreme difference between someone with paranoia and someone without paranoia. Perhaps it has to do with adjustment, the way that some people are more adjusted to other people. Certainly there is this notion of a kind of complex where people are more likely to think a certain way about something and how that colors their whole worldview. I would say that in terms of thinking about certain philosophical contributions, such as that by Steven Pinker, that this negativity bias that we do have, is often inaccurate. And so when we think that people are out to harm us, we are often incorrect, whether or not this comes from a neurodivergent mindset or not. We know that conspiracy theories are very often chosen over a more rational explanation, and this is because of the emotional appeal. So as I work through these complicated ideas, I realize that I can't really explain why someone might experience paranoia and why they would assume certain things about people that may or may not be true. To kind of ground this in a concrete example, I would think about my own subjective experience of something like paranoia, and realizing that often people really aren't, plotting in a room to try to manipulate me. But I feel, based off my understanding of somebody like Foucault, that manipulations are very much what people do and what people are good at. The whole reason why someone might feel hurt or violated by something like a manipulation is because these manipulations work. So it's understandable in that mindset how we might be evolutionarily programmed to have at least some kind of paranoia, even if it's generally in the context of mental illness. And certainly that makes it difficult to understand these certain ideas of like why someone would feel so much fear about why they are experiencing something that they can't understand. I have in the past described my own kind of metaphysical paranoia, which is one where I don't necessarily say that people are trying to hurt me necessarily, but that the universe is opposed to me in some way or another. And I guess I've just had to realize that it's very unrealistic to expect the universe to be opposed to you, especially when considering that the universe is indifferent. There isn't generally some kind of force, I would say, that is working against you. Though I think what makes it difficult is that it makes sense to believe something like that because we want to explain what we are going through, and essentially we grasp at straws. So when I think about difficult interactions that I've had with people, trying to understand why I get paranoid about them, I ultimately have to realize that they may be manipulating me, and the reason why I'm frustrated is because those manipulations work, but that I also have to realize that it's much more complicated, that there are different dynamics and aspects to interpersonal relationships, often structured in a hierarchy, as you might get from somebody like Foucault or a postmodernist, for instance. And certainly these ideas are very real. So as I said at the beginning, I don't have a conclusion, but I've been trying to understand the context of these kinds of arguments, trying to understand why somebody might assume automatically that people are trying to hurt them. It doesn't mean that aggression doesn't exist, that people don't try to hurt other people, and certainly what I want to do is acknowledge the manipulations, but what makes it hard is figuring out exactly what that manipulation is and why that manipulation is happening. So I would say in general that I do think manipulations work, which is why we feel the pain that we do when we are dealing with emotional trauma and turmoil from other people and other people's actions. But we certainly do our best to assert ourselves and make the best explanation, inference to the best explanation to things that we can. This is Phoenix, a little unorganized talk in a way, or disorganized in a way, but I kind of like the free flow and the free association. So I hope you enjoyed it. This is Phoenix, and thank you for your time.